Hello and welcome to our very first live session in cooperation with our online parcours. We're very happy to welcome you, all of you. Right now we have 23 viewers. We're happy that you could make it to here. So we will have 2 sessions today. The first session starts now with 4 of our beloved graduates, and the second session will be later on starting at 4 p.m. And you can ask questions in the chat while you're here, and we will then moderate it and ask our graduates as soon as they finish their presentation the questions. So feel free to use the chat and type them in. We will try to answer them all. And now I'm happy to announce Dorothee Clasen with her graduate work. And enjoy.
So hello everybody, I'm going to present my master thesis to you, and the title of my work is Embrace, a tongue computer interface, and this work was supervised by Professor Lasse Scherfig and Caroline Höfleit-Kist. So yeah, to give you a short overview on my topic, I would like to start with an introduction video.
Embrace is a device that allows a tongue-based interaction between human and machines. By moving a magnetic element back and forward, the user can give an input. It has a built-in Wi-Fi transmitter, which is located behind the user's ear. This way the input signal can be sent to other electronic devices, computers, or IoT objects. The device can be used by different target groups and in different scenarios. For the first prototype, a gameplay situation was created. Controlling an object with your tongue movement is an unfamiliar, yet engaging experience. The player was limited and highly focused on her sense of touch, as the device and her interaction with it would remain invisible for her own eyes.
So, I hope you got a quick overview on my topic. Feel free to visit the exhibition as well later on. But yeah, so in the beginning of my master program, I had to find a topic to research on, and therefore I decided to work on haptic interfaces. Because in the area of human-computer interaction, this is an ongoing discourse, and there are a lot of prototypes and research in this area. Basically asking the question, how can we physically interact with an interface, and how can the sense of touch be used while doing so? So in the beginning, I did a lot of research in this area, and today I'm not going to talk so much about the theoretical approach of my work, but still I just wanted to show you a few of the papers that I used in my own argumentation, because this is a really valuable discourse in human-computer interaction. And if you want to have a closer look at these theories, feel free to read my final thesis later on. But these are like a few concepts that inspired my work. So for my master topic, I set myself the goal to develop a haptic interface. And because I wanted to look at new possibilities, how to interact with an interface, I wanted to really build a lot of prototypes, because the sense of touch always requires you to feel and to explore the interface. And I was trying to push boundaries a little bit more forward, I would say. And yeah, so I decided in the end to create an application so I could physically really test my own interface. And if you look at the design and research in the area of haptic interfaces, most of the time the human hand will be needed to interact with these interfaces. There's a lot of research in this area. So I actually decided to go another approach by focusing my work on another body part. And so I thought about different areas that would be suitable. And in the end, I felt interested in building an intraoral device. And there were a few reasons why I got curious about this topic. For one, of course, it's a rather, let's say, unconventional area for an interface. And I found this really challenging and interesting to work on, because the human mouth actually can sense a lot of information, and normally it's a rather private and intimate area that we don't use to interact with other objects. So yeah, I found this really interesting. And another reason for me to work with the mouth area was the fact that when you think about universal design, most interfaces need the hand of the user to interact with them. And if you think about other users who might not be able to move their hand that good, for them, I wanted to explore some alternative interaction ways if you use your mouth and your tongue instead. So yeah, this was my topic finding. And so for the prototyping phase, of course, in the beginning, I had to think about what kind of interface do I want to build. And so I started about thinking, what can I do with my tongue? Can I feel certain things? How can my tongue give an input? And at the same time, how could I build a device with a haptic output for my tongue to feel? And so I started with different ideas, and actually, of course, because I wanted to build the prototype and try them out, I had to find a way to attach electronics to the inside of my mouth. And as you can see here, so I learned how to build this plastic-based dental retainers. So I had a way to attach the electronic and the device to my mouth inside, and I could reproduce them really quickly. And another really important part of my work was finding electronic components that I could work with. For example, because you see the area that I could work with for my device was kind of narrowed or not so big. So I had to find small magnets and sensors that would be suitable for my prototypes. And yeah, so as I said, I tried out different approaches, like using movable elements like this printed circuit board that would make a flapping sensation. And basically, it was always a mixture of me designing or prototyping really quickly this prototype and then trying it out. And for this one, for example, I realized that my tongue wouldn't really feel this flapping element. So I had to change some parameters there. And another approach that I followed, for example, you can see here a little bit of documentation. I attached pneumatic elements to the device, and this way there would be a moving element inside of my mouth. And when I tried out this prototype for the first time, it was quite interesting for me because my tongue wouldn't feel the movement of the element so clearly, because it was not strong enough to feel in the first place. But more interestingly, if you look over here, for the first prototype that I built, I couldn't really attach the tube to the element 100%. So there was a slightly airflow coming out of the device. And when I tried it on, I suddenly could feel air pressure inside of my mouth because my gum would become cold. So yeah, basically with this principle that I tried out, I found a really elegant way to have a haptic output inside of your mouth, because it's just a slight air pressure that you can use. But because building these prototypes with the technology that I had at first hand was a little bit too complex, I had to let go, for example, of this idea that I had for an interface. But for future research, I think this would be really interesting to look at again. So yeah, like you saw in the video for my final prototype, I decided to work with an electromagnetic principle, where the user could move around this element. And therefore, I had to design the device for myself. And As you saw in the video, I attached magnetic sensors at the device, and at the same time there was a slidable magnetic element that the user would push around with his or her tongue. And for future applications, I would, because in this part of my work, I still had to connect it to an external Wi-Fi module. So for this prototype, you had a small cable coming out of the user's mouth, because I had to connect all the components to the Wi-Fi model. So of course, in future applications, this one would be reduced and implemented into the device itself. So when I designed the final prototype, I think I had to do a lot of fine-tuning to explore what is possible. For example, I had to think about where to position the sensors, because certain areas were too difficult for my tongue to reach, or I had to bend way too much around with my own tongue to still trigger the sensor. And yeah, so this was a big part, like fine-tuning where to put the sensors, where I can slide elements back and forward, or what I also found really interesting when I designed the gameplay situation. Of course, I wanted the user to move the magnetic element back and forward, and the distance between the two sensors should not be too far apart, because otherwise the gameplay would feel really unnatural and it would take you too long to move the ball around. So yeah, these were fine-tuning issues that I had to solve. And here you see a few more pictures of the prototyping process, because yeah, I had to reduce the size of the elements, and obviously I had to attach everything and had to overcome a few issues. And what you might observe as well with my prototype is that this prototype right now is only capable to have an haptic input. Initially, I wanted to also have a haptic output in my device, but I realized while setting up the prototype that this is a complex task and that I would need a more professional manufacturing processes. So for this prototype, I decided to leave the haptic output beside at first, so I could realize a prototype. Yeah, I scaled down everything. I made sure that the connection is steady. And yeah, so to test the prototype and also to enable my supervisor to use his own device, because obviously he could not use the retainer that I built for myself, I created a gameplay situation with the game TONG. And therefore I had to set up a device for my supervisor as well, as I said before. And this was also an interesting design process for me, because I had to redesign the device a little bit and make sure that his sensors would be suitable for his ability to move the tongue. So there was a lot of fine-tuning as well. And so, yeah, we managed to play a few rounds against each other. And I must say, in the beginning of the gameplay, of course, it was unfamiliar for me to use my tongue as an input organ or body part. And so in the beginning, my eye-tongue coordination was quite untrained. But after using the game a few times, I got really better and I improved my skills. So the gameplay, I think, was really fluent and enjoyable. And yeah, so to quickly reflect on my work and my findings, I think I'm happy that I chose this topic, because it gave me the possibility to think about interfaces, but also to really quickly build them and to explore what kind of movement can my tongue fulfill, what kind of haptic sensations can you actually feel in the inside of your mouth. And so I think this research should continue, and I would really like to continue it with other users that might influence also the shape of the device. And of course, for future applications, the size of the whole device needs to be reduced, and I want to get rid of the cables, of course, because this is for the wearing comfort of the device. I think I managed to build a quite comfortable device for half an hour or an hour, but for long-term use, of course, you have to rethink the whole concept a little bit. But yeah, of course, I see, or let's say, I'm aware that this might not replace the common interfaces, and I think in 10 years, people will not use my device instead of their smartphone, but still, I see a few possible applications for InBrace, because if you think, for example, about physical therapy, and a patient who has to retrain his tongue movement, InBrace could be used as a playful therapy element to motivate patients to retrain their tongue movement. And also there might be special work tasks where the user's hand, feet, and eyes are already occupied by other devices or by other informations that he has to listen to or to look at. And so InBrace could be an alternative interface for such a situation. But of course, the most obvious use for my device would be for users with disabilities. Because if you think about interface design, and most of the time they are designed for the human hand, but if you have a user who can no longer move his fingers, I think this could be an alternative. And yeah, these are possible applications that I would love to research on in the future more. And so, yeah, thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to questions.
Okay, thank you so much. I think this was a great presentation from you, and really detailed presentation as well. So you said you'd like to work on it now after your thesis as well. Do you already know how you could imagine to do that?
Yeah, because as I mentioned, my work was beginning in the basic research area. I had to build something, and I think, as I said, physical therapy would be a really interesting field to test it out with patients. And also, I really would like to talk to companies, because if you look at products on the market, you have, for example, for wheelchair users, you have this two interfaces that you can use, and they are not so precisely in their input way, and I would love to research on this topic. And yeah, this is one direction that I could imagine.
Yeah, this sounds great. This would be lovely. So you said you didn't have a lot of, you did basic research. Mm-hmm. So you didn't have a lot of knowledge in this area before. How was it to approach a topic you haven't approached yet with your last work?
Yeah, it's a quality and a challenge at the same time, because really in the beginning I went to the University for Dental Medical Technology things, and they, sorry, I don't remember the name, the department, they taught me how to build this one, and there are not so many other projects where they attached elements to your mouth, and so I really had to think about how to manage this. And so I think I learned a lot during the process, and I never worked on this topic before, actually. Yeah.
Where did you find like the most troubles during your work? Could you elaborate on that a bit?
I think it was, I don't want to complain too much about building such tiny devices, but the problem always was I was physically building them. They were sitting on my desk, and then I put them into my mouth for the first time, and then I could feel something. And the other thing was, of course, if you think about the mouth, it's a really wet area, and you had to make sure that you don't get electric shocks. And to be honest, this was challenging for me. And also I had to glue elements to the device, and of course you cannot use every glue. And I was, for example, happy that my supervisor agreed to wear something electronic inside of his mouth that I built by myself. So yeah.
We have a question from Colin Cooper, who is asking about, do you think it is possible to remove the earpiece and have everything put in the mouthpiece?
Yeah, for sure. If you look at other projects, they manage to, but for this you have to print a printed circuit board. The thing that I had in behind my ear can be manufactured if you individually print a PCB, and then you can put it into the device. But I was just not, I was not capable to do this in the short time, but it's possible, and you can even implement the battery inside. So there's also another research about this where they have like a chewing gum in this size, and there's also a Wi-Fi module implemented. But I think you need a team of electronic experts maybe to set this up. But it's possible, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. But there's a whole waterproof question, probably also like some kind of wave control as well for. Yeah, but that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do we have another question in the chat?
Nope, we don't so far, but we have like great feedbacks from everyone online. Everyone says it's an awesome project. It's inspiring. Tongue and eye coordination is a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe on that, how like now your tongue must be like such a pro in.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Then thank you very, very much. Yeah, we also got some applause in the chat for you, and a big thank you from our side as well.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Me.
And then we will continue next with Akihiko. Oh, I never talked with Aki.
Hi.
It's a good.
Rote Liebe.
Okay, thank you so much, Doro. And now we're going to have already our next talk from Akihiko, and we're very happy to welcome him here as well.
Okay, is it right? Hello. Hi, my name is Akihiko Sugiura. I'm a master's student who just graduated. By just, I mean like just a few days ago. So I'm really fresh here. Thanks for the Parcours team for giving me the opportunity to talk about my project. I'll share my slides then first. Okay, just a moment. So I was told I have 15 minutes for my presentation, which is half the time of my actual presentation. So I will try to really condense it in a really abridged way, but let's see how this goes. Okay. All right, so this is on live already, okay? I can start now, right? Again, thank you for the audience for taking time to listen to my presentation. So this is my thesis. This is a presentation for my master thesis, developing a grammar for 3D notation. Notation is a term I use to describe the process and product of visualizing information. So you can also replace the word with like, let's say infographics or information visualization, information architecture. But I would like to stick to the word notation since this seems to be the most general and most least associated with any specific medium. So in a nutshell, just a moment, let me, here you go, okay. So in a nutshell, my thesis is about finding key principles for mapping information three-dimensionally. The goal here is to develop not a product, but a theory. Like if you think about 2D notations, there are multiple books written about it, and you see many principles like grid systems, Z-pattern, F-pattern, Gestalt principles, you name it, there's a lot. And I'm trying to follow the same path, except that in my case, I'm aiming for a 3D visualization. Now, as this explanation already implies, my thesis topic is not the typical problem-solving kind of project. If I have to put my work in the context of design research, it falls into the exploratory. This is a framework by Ritza in 2019, where she distinguishes 4 types of design research. There's problem solving, evaluation, ideation, user research, foundational trend research, and then exploratory, which is for giving inspiration to people. Exploratory projects are those that are usually navigated or driven by curiosity and often does not have a very fixed outcome. So now that I position my work as exploratory project, the curiosity that drove my project is, well, a thought about communication. If you think about communication, there are multiple ways we can communicate, and even more, there are different ways to categorize these methods. One way to do this is by thinking about the dimension it conveys. For example, I'm talking right now, which you can say is one dimension because it's time-based, and time goes from past to future, and there's no going back. It's a linear process, one dimension. You can also draw or write the same content I'm speaking right now on a paper, which would then make it 2D. So if there is a 1D and 2D notation, the question here is there such thing as a 3D notation? And if there is, what does it do? What does it look like? And how is it different or even better compared to the 1D or 2D notation? This was the starting point of my research. The idea itself came back way before KISS and just grew up inside my head at some point. I just felt I have to study this really further. So just to clarify, when I say 3D notation, it seems that many people imagine something from a sci-fi movie. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched movies like Iron Man or Minority Report. Basically, these futuristic, holograms floating in the air. And yes, that's very inspiring. And I'm not denying that that's not 3D notation. However, if you really think about it, we ourselves are already living in a 3D space with a 3D body. And there's a tendency of human that projects information to surroundings. So in my thesis, I'm arguing that fragments of 3D notation can already be found in our daily lives. And my thesis also focuses on collecting these daily examples and somehow abstract key principles out of them. The emphasis on these daily examples also aligns with my criticism against what we can find, the works that we can find about 3D notation in academia or either in the market. like you can see if you have ever used a VR application, or also you might have seen this home screen, something like that on the left. You can also, if you're like familiar with, let's say, hypertext, you might have seen something from which is in the middle or on the right side. These are again also ideas or projects or products that also tries to map information three-dimensionally. However, they are basically tech-driven, meaning that, well, they make information 3D because it's possible because of the new emerging technology, and they don't really answer the question like, why do we need 3D notation, or what does it even mean to think three-dimensionally? So in my thesis, to really understand and point out what is really important to consider when designing a 3D notation, my research, there's few research directions I've made. One of the most critical ones are that I abandon any digital mediums as an output and focus solely on tangible and analog physical representation. So that's my research direction. I'm focusing on trying to find out the theory of 3D notation through looking into the physical daily examples, and also trying to focus on visualizing the concept as a tangible and physical object. A little side note about the methodology I used: I followed what's called research through design, which is basically about making something in your hand and then getting insights from it and then trying to generalize it into a theory. So this is what exactly I did. Prior to my theory part, I made about 20 prototypes. And then from each prototype, I got some insights, and which you can see on the diagrams right now. And then after that, I tried to merge them into one single structure. So from now on, I would like to give you an overview of what my theory is all about. Like I said, it's only 15 minutes, so I'm going to show you the very surface of it. I hope still it makes sense to you. So to jump to the conclusion, in my thesis, I'm arguing that there's three crucial perspectives to think about or design 3D notation. There's in 3D, at 3D, and with 3D. In 3D is about how meanings are linked to spatial positions. At 3D is about how we can enhance 2D notations like diagrams and infographics by using height. And with 3D is about how users can actually physically interact with in 3D or at 3D structure. You can also say that in 3D and at 3D is about the structure of information, while with 3D is more about the representation of information. Okay, so I'll now quickly go into each of them and just give you an example of what I mean by each in, as, with 3D. So in 3D, like I just mentioned before, is about how spatial positions convey meanings. This is quite obvious if you think about the way we talk. Like I'm talking right now, and you might have realized that I'm using some spatial metaphors. Again, this is another example of a sentence. Let's put aside our difference and try to find a common ground. Here, the phrase putting aside implies that something in the center is more important than something aside. Or the phrase top priority indicates that there's a correlation between height and also the importance. So you can go on and just like collect all the spatial metaphors, and that's exactly what I did. And so in the end, I have to mention the spatial metaphors do differ depending on which language you use, although it's more or less similar. But for example, if you're using English, you can map these meanings to space, like something like a diagram, which I'm showing you right now. So that's what in my thesis I'm calling spatial conception. We have a tendency, you can find a tendency of projecting meanings to space positions in language. Okay, so that's basically the idea of in 3D. Next one, at 3D, is how to enhance 2D with extra height. Now, my research is all about advocating the use of third dimension, but I'm not saying that 2D is bad, or I'm not denying the rich history of 2D notations. Instead, I'm trying to say that 3D is an extension of 2D, and it's not a different entity. So standing on that understanding, how can we turn 2D notation into 3D? Well, if you've ever played with paper, this is kind of, again, really simple. It's a conceptual thought, but if you have a sheet of paper, you can either bend it or wrap it up so that it becomes a 3D structure. Or if you have different sheets of paper, you can somehow position it parallel to each other or orthogonally and make a composition in a spatial way. So the same idea applies for when you try to think about either improving the 2D notation to 3D or merging 2D different 2D notations to one single 3D notation. I'm going to explain the latter one. So this is an example I made for myself. There's a timeline. On the left, you see a timeline of major countries during World War I. On the below, you see a map of the same countries during those times. So if you've ever taken a history class, you probably had this situation where you have to compare the map and the timeline and try to like make sense out of it. And what you see on the right is my attempt to merge these two diagrams together so that you can explain how the World War I was started as a bilateral event, which eventually expanded to a more international incident, but not as like comparing two diagrams, but more as a spatial pattern using one 3D structure. Of course, you can also, you might be wondering, like, why do we need to do this anyway? We can already make sense out of by just comparing two and merging them inside your head. And that's totally true, I agree, but like this example was taken from a history exam, meaning that there's a high chance of making mistakes when you try to make sense out of different diagrams. And also, if you think about doing this in a group, not just history exam, but in general, like if you have different 2D notations and have to somehow compare them or like make sense by using different types of notations, it's often the case that people have different understanding of how they merge together. So, and then if you discuss based on different understanding, it happens in a very chaotic discussion. So in other words to describe AS3D is that AS3D is an attempt to externalize how people think and then make it shareable so that we can have a better mutual understanding of the same subject. So finally, there's with 3D, where how users can interact physically with the in or as 3D structures. When I showed you the previous slide, you might have noticed that, well, okay, right, I get the concept, but you know, there's items overlapping each other and it's really hard to read. And this is, yes, that's obviously true, because if you think about how we perceive 2D and 3D structures, 2D structures, you just need one perspective. You stand in front of it and that's all you need. But for 3D structures, you need to see from different vantage points. So perceiving a 3D structure requires more than 2D perception. You can say that if 2D perception is instant action, then 3D perception is more like a process. So viewers are now should more be considered as users instead of, since it includes the process of understanding the structure. Where was I? Yes. So based on this understanding that to understand a 3D structure, you need to think of a process. I also, this understanding also leads to my argument that, well, if you have a 3D information structure, you should definitely visualize it also as a 3D structure. And that's where this tangibility and physicality comes in, where I think that it's very important that you make a 3D information structure as a 3D physical object, because it's way intuitive and interactive and direct than seeing it on a computer screen or whatever medium you have. So based on this understanding, I'm proposing here that 3 ways to interact with representation of 3D notation. One, there's if you have a physical output of 3D notation, it should be able to provide multiple vantage points, which is what I just mentioned. You have to see the structure from different perspectives, so you need to be able to do that. The second one, reconstruction, is, well, there are some structures that are really complex that you can't really understand by just going around or like looking up and down on it. So in that case, you can also design the representation so that you can rebuild the information structure on your own. And if you've ever played with Lego, that's also, you probably understand what I mean. Building is also understanding. The last one, construction, is also about building, except that, well, reconstruction is basically following what's already there. There's an information structure predefined, and you try to remake this process. Construction is the opposite. So if you have a physical representation which denotes some kind of information, you can also use it to construct new meanings. So it's more about thinking in 3D rather than understanding in 3D. So that's basically what Wiz3D is about. And like I said, I'm arguing here that to design a meaningful and not ostentatious 3D notation, you need three perspectives, in, as, with. And this is basically what my thesis, the outcome of my thesis. I'm trying to develop a theory that somehow clarifies what you need to think when you design 3D notation. This might really confuse you because everything is so conceptual. So although I do not want you to consider this as a final prototype or like great example of what 3D notation can be, I would like to introduce one prototype that I made. So this is a physical prototype of a notation about. It's a public how to say it, political debate about the use of nuclear plants in Japan after the Fukushima incident in 2011. So this was a really controversial topic because, well, first of all, there are many points to cover and everybody's talking about something different. And as somebody who has no knowledge about this topic before, it was really hard to follow this discussion going on. So seeing this as a problem, I tried to somehow visualize and elucidate what's going on by first, this involves two steps. First, I made two 2D diagrams, two notations, one about how different the topics we need to consider and how they related to each other. Second, about the difference, a list of different political parties or organizations and try to compare what they are actually saying, the opinion list. And by merging them together, which you see on the right hand, I'm trying to elucidate or visualize the rationale behind each opinions, because well, obviously opinions have to be based on some facts, hopefully. And to do so, I use the idea of in as 3D with 3D. Here you can see that there's the two diagrams are merged together, which is what I mentioned in as 3D. In 3D, because the fact, the one you see above, is on the left, is since it is the basis of the opinions, it's placed below the opinions, and then also the height. The height here, the lines denote the degree of support. So the higher it goes, the more that the facts support these opinions, and that leads to something like this. In terms of this 3D, this was made for an exhibition in 2018 at KIST, and therefore I was not able to make it reconstructable. So it was more like the first approach of this 3D about allowing people to go around and see from different perspectives. But if put in another setting, it would be really nice to have this as a construction process, a reconstruction process. So making it like a Lego kit that you can build and try to understand while building. So that's an example of how 3D notation can potentially be used. I hope that gave you some idea of what I mean by 3D notation. And so reflection, just to really like catch up or like look on what I did. Basically, I made a framework so that people can start talking about 3D notation and possibly design a new 3D notation on their own. The same framework can also be used to assess the existing work, which can also start provoking discussion about this idea of mapping information three-dimensionally. For future application, all of this is still pretty much in a conceptual state, and so it's really I really have to start thinking for what fields this can really be used. I've mentioned political debates, which with my examples, I'm also seeing a lot of potential in fields like this is work I've made for another prototype I made before. I see potential in fields like ideation workshop, where you actually generate new ideas and have different criteria based on for each ideas. And by having a physical output for this kind of stuff, well, first of all, physical and tangible objects has something magical about changing the way people interact with each other. And also by physically moving things around and positioning them in different directions, we might be able to categorize them differently than what we can do in 2D notation. I also see great potential of this method in emergency situations like earthquakes or tsunami, where you have you have to collect different kinds of information at the same time and somehow based on those merged information, you have to make the right decision. So wherever you have to like use different diagrams together and make some sense out of it, I feel there's a potential for 3D notation. But yes, like I mentioned, this is a grammar. I'm trying to make a series. So, and grammar is basically grammar. What the content itself is made by the user or the talker. So I really would be intrigued to see how people can utilize this method or this grammar notation framework and see how others can come up with new applications. That was a really quick abridged version, but yes, that's basically what my thesis is all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There was so much in such a short time, and really, really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah.
And maybe, how did you even come up to the topic of notation, and especially 3D notation, before we go to the questions we already have in the chat?
Where I got the idea of 3D notation is it's a pretty complex story. I think I first got this idea when I was in high school. You saw the example from the history class, right? That's basically the idea I got when I was studying history class, and I got so bored. There was like a page about timeline, another page about the map, and I had to go back and forth between these pages, which was so annoying to the point that I felt I just wanted to, strip out these pages and put it together. I think that's where I first got the idea of 3D notation, and the idea itself ended there. But then it was always at the back of my head, and it came back again when I started studying theater design. I have a bachelor in set design for theater, and I saw that mapping scenes in this limited stage is somehow similar to graphic design, because there's also graphic design. You also have a similar limited amount of page where you have to put the information on. So then I started to draw an analogy of maybe you can make a graphic design in 3D space, and then this somehow led to this whole concept. But yeah, it's really like going everywhere, and yeah, pretty tangled.
That is amazing. So we have two questions in the chat. One is from Colin, and she asks, you've been thinking about this deeply for a long time. What are some ideas you wish you would have been able to explore but you haven't?
There are actually a lot. In my thesis, I basically focused on small scale because I believe that having an overview of the whole information structure is really important. But like if you think about simply thinking about 3-dimensional, you can also think about size of an architecture. Like architecture is also some kind of, in a way you can say it's 3D notation because you map different rooms in different places. And so I would love to maybe consider a little bit in a scale 3D notation in a bigger scale and see like to what extent how it would change my framework, or how it would actually like different, maybe this would also open a different context this can be used. That would be really interesting. I also would love to dive more into the workshop games, which I briefly mentioned, but there's a lot going on with ideation workshops, and it would be nice to implement my ideas there to see how it changes group dynamic. And also, I can talk for this era, but last one I should mention is, well, in my thesis, I mentioned that, well, I'm focusing on analog and tangible and denying all the digital mediums, because I feel like there's something we need to really focus about, and there's something we can learn from this physical. And I was also against this tech-driven approach. But now that I've somehow outlined the principles, I think this idea can be implemented in VR again, or like any virtual environment. So it would also be interesting to go back to digital areas and see how this can change what we have already, or find a collaborator who can work with me. And yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be especially interesting for now, for these times now.
Right.
And then we have also another question from Mauro Rego. Do you have any idea how this can be used for semantic labeling for 3D data, and how this can be useful for machine-generated 3D modeling?
Machine-generated, I guess I'm not really familiar with the field of big data or AI, but most of the visualization I've seen is more about like numerical data. Every data has some kind of like numbers attached to it, and that's how they define the position of information in space. Mine is more like based on human perception or like human conception of space. So I guess it really follows a different logic there. So back to the question, how can it be implemented in this computer-generated 3D? I think it would allow, if you use my idea of 3D notation into this field, there would be like a different way of, different logic. It's basically adding a different logic to the visualization. So we might be able to visualize the same content in a more comprehensible way because it follows how we perceive 3D. I hope that answers the question, like basing on how we use metaphors, etc. You might be able that, because 3D infographics are also often pretty hard to conceive. You don't know where to start from, for example, and then you just look at the numbers and like, okay, I have no idea what I'm watching. So by using 3D conception or like how we understand space, this might help this gap between this data and comprehension.
Okay, thank you so much. We also have comments in the chat which say that your presentation was really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
And also a very complex topic. And also we want to say thank you that you've been here. And now we will change to the next person, which is Dusan Catricheo.
Okay. Thank you everyone for listening to my presentation. I left my contact on the slide, but and also on the website of Parcours, but please contact me if you have more questions. If you would like to talk more, I'll be really be happy to talk about this more. So thank you very much.
Rote Liebe.
Okay, thank you so much, Aki, for your interesting presentation, which you also all can check out in more detail in the link we provided you. And next up, we have Dusan Catricheo with his master thesis, and welcome him. And as always, feel free to ask questions in the chat and enjoy.
Hi there, my name is Dusan Catricheo, and yeah, I'm gonna talk about my thesis project, which is called Opening the Glassbox. I'm gonna start with the presentation now. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna start with a small introduction of what my project is. It's an interface that is, oh, sorry. Okay, sorry, I made a mistake. I'm sorry about that. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna start with the presentation. My project was a digital interface, which is made for museums, so people can see inside museum cases. They can select what kind of object they want to learn about. And then when they select an object, they can decide what kind of things they want to learn about these objects. So for instance, sorry, I think I have a problem with this. Can you see me? I have a problem with this. Hello? Sorry.
Some small technical issues, but we will be right back.
Rote Liebe.
Okay, so we're right back. Had some technical issues, but it's solved now. So now we will go and jump right back in Dusan's presentation.
Okay, thank you, Tamara. I'm sorry for the technical issue. Well, I'm going to start over. My name is Dusan Catricheo, and I'm going to talk about my thesis work, which is called Opening the Glassbox. It's my master thesis work. And I'm going to give you like a small summary of it. It's a digital interface for tablets that visitors to museums can use to select an object from a determined case, select one object, and they can select also what kind of information they want to learn about this particular object. This prototype was made with just one object, which is a taxidermied bird, which is this. I found this bird in Hanover 1 year ago, and it was kind of my source of inspiration because I thought about what is the story of this object, because now it's hanging on the wall here in my home. But I was thinking about how that object got there into this antique store, and how was before, who did this, hunt this bird or find this bird dead on a forest, I don't know. But I was finding super interesting talking about the story of the object and all the information that one object can hold. So this is a really small, well, it's not small, but I'm going to talk about this really fast. There is a lot of concepts that are around my project, and the center of all of them, it's museography, which I will explain in just a couple of seconds. During my research process, I start researching about museum studies. Museology and museography are really key concepts in museum studies. Museology is the science of the museum. It's like the theory that museums use to study itself, their reason to be, where they're going, what they do, their identity, etc. And museography is the application of those theories from museology. It is also known as museum practice, applied museology, or expography, and it has a lot to do with the lighting, museography itself, architecture, graphic design, and so on. Every museums have missions. They have to collect objects, they have to identify them, they have to document those objects, research about them, they have to ensure the conservation of those objects, and they also have a really huge responsibility with their community and with their visitors. So they have to be open for the public. They have to have like really open relationships with them. And also the other mission of the museum, and I think it's what people know the most, is the exhibition. And they exhibit objects to educate and to enjoyment. And I think even though my project has a bit of almost every of these missions, it's more focused on the exhibition, education, and enjoyment. There are several types of museums. There are museums of dogs of breed dogs, chocolate, adult toys, torture, war, etc. But I think the most famous are art museums, historical museums, technology museums, and natural history museums, which are the ones that protect the natural heritage from the present and the past. And they also made a huge, in charge of a huge scientific research about biology or natural sciences in general. And this project is containing this environment, the Natural History Museum. So some definitions about heritage, because I will talk about heritage a lot maybe here. Heritage is considered all objects or stuff that could be material or intangible that are collectively recognized to have a value that should be, for instance, historical memory, or they have a value because they're unique, or they are related with a culture and so on. But the thing is, they are recognized to have a value, and they should be protected. They are public property, and they should be protected also for future generations. They are divided in tangible, which are like all of these things. I'm not going to every detail here, but mostly there are things that you can touch and things that you cannot touch that are mostly related with forms or activity, like singing, dancing, and so on. Again, this project is more focused in this area, natural heritage, in this left part of the slides. And natural heritage are like landscapes, environment, fauna and flora, animals and plants. An interesting thing about what I find it interesting when I was researching about the theory of museum objects and how objects can, ordinary objects can become museum objects and how they can be elevated to material culture. Actually, everything, every element, everything can be considered as material culture once they gain their status for a museum. The important thing is their value, the cultural value. The cultural value of one thing is that makes a museum object a museum object. So, for instance, here are 3 different types of shoe: a boot, a high heel shoe, and a leather shoe. And they may have differences in, I don't know, price, depending on its materiality. But once you get a little bit of information about these objects, they cultural value raise. So for instance, this boot was Neil Armstrong's boot. This high heel was the last shoe that Alexander McQueen designed before passing. And the leather shoe was worn by Eskimo kid, like, I don't know, 300 years ago. So they have different values. And yeah, objects in museums can, according to Thea Meyer, can be clustered by three different groups. Works of art, which are, their values are related to their aesthetics and who created this, the author, who created this piece, I don't know, the most famous, the author, the value of the work of art increases. Then we have witnesses, which are objects that they may not have a directly value by itself, but they are linked to a character, important character. So for instance, this piano was the first piano that Beethoven used for composing a piece. And the other group of objects are specimens, which are my object in this project, and they don't have a value per se. They don't have like a value as one own object. Their value is mostly used as a representative or something. So for instance, this bird can be exhibited in a museum as a representative of birds, vertebrates, dinosaurs, tetrapods, flying animals, but it doesn't have like an intrinsic value by itself. Yes, and yeah, for instance, I'm gonna talk about the object biographies, which I think it's a really important topic in my project. Every object have in different degrees of biographies. So for instance, the Mona Lisa or Gioconda is this really famous painting in the Louvre. I'm sorry for my French, but I think it's how you pronounce it, I think. This painting was stolen years ago, and it was missing from the museum for a while until find the thief, which was an Italian guy, and they took back the painting to the museum. This Lincoln Continental was the car where Kennedy was assassinated, and when he was killed, this car was still in use, but they enhanced the materiality for being bulletproof, and it was used for other presidents as well later, until they decided to change the model, and then this car was donated to the museum. And finally, these pigeons, Darwin's pigeons, are exhibited in the London Museum of Natural History, and they look like normal pigeons, but the interesting fact about these objects is that Darwin bred those pigeons, and he did it while he was studying the natural selection. So these pigeons somehow help him to finally make his really famous theory. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the object and people interaction inside museums. So a really important thing inside this phenomena, this relationship, is the interpretation. Interpretation is when a visitor goes to a museum, observes an object, and understand the object's value, and for instance, why that object is important and why that object should be conserved, protected, and studied. So that's the ideal scenario. Visitor goes, see an object. This object has some information that can make a clear and complete picture for the visitor, and the visitor will say, "Oh, I understand this object completely." But then, when we have pieces like this one, I took this photo, I think, 1 year ago in Venice, in the Natural History Museum in Venice, and they only have a small label. And if you don't, even though if you read the label, it's a little bit an object a little bit confusing. There is not much information left. The label says mammoth tooth, mammoth molar, sorry. And this piece don't look like a teeth at all, and it's a fossil, and fossil tends to have like really different shapes, so they are a little bit difficult to recognize as a piece. So for instance, if you don't have any information here, you don't know how this object was in context in the alive animal, and you lose an important information, for instance, that molars are really important for identifying elephant or proboscidean species, which are elephants. Then we have 2 examples of the same species, a dodo bird, from 2 different museums, and the same story. They are just accompanied by a small label with just the name, dodo, and the scientific name. But you don't have any information regarding like how they disappear, how they gone extinct. They don't have any clue with other animals that have the same destiny as the dodo, the same destiny, or how actual animals are in the same danger now. They don't even make a relationship with that dodo was a pigeon, and the closest relative of a dodo now is this Nicobar pigeon. So in this case, when you have objects that are exhibited in this way and they don't have enough information, the visitor cannot make some relations or cannot understand this object completely. The visitor will leave and will go to see another object without interpreting this object successfully. I think that could be from many reasons. In the first case of the molar, could be fragmented specimen and out of context. Sometimes there are too much information, which is too technical, or in other cases, lack of information at all. And when that happens, I say that the specimen is black box, because you have the specimen there and all the information, all the movements, all the activity that led to that single object being there is not shown, and it's a matter of indifference somehow, like the object appeared there out of the blue. There is an interesting concept about interpretation that is called meaning making. I'm going to talk about this really, really fast. And it was coined by Silberman. And she states that every visitor should be able to go to a museum and have their own experience, their own interpretation based on their self-identity, their personal background and knowledge, and so on. And I kind of agree on that in some level, but if you don't give information to the visitors, it's super hard to have a relationship or a connection with this object in a deeper level. And this is how I use actor network theory for this project and for the interface. Actor network theory is a really, in my opinion, is a little bit complex theory, so I'm not going to detail any concept of it, but in a general view, focus on the elements participating inside a network and the relationships among them. So what I'm trying to do this and with the interface is to show visitors how they are related with this particular object. If we think about this bird, this jay, how they are related with that bird, and how that particular object is related with other objects inside the museum or outside the museum. It could be in the exhibitions, it could be in the deposit, or it could be in a park, for instance. So when you show that information, the visitor can have better ways to understand how we are connected to that particular specimen. So when you give that information and when show the visitor, hey, this object got here and this to the museum because it was, I don't know, donated by a person from South America, I don't know. You get a clear view and a more wide view to understand this subject. And when that happens, I think you can start opening the black box and actually appreciate the object. So to my proposal process, the first thing that I started was collecting data. So I sent surveys to visitors, and I was super interested about their expectations when they go to a museum, natural history museum, what they learn about that. Here are some results, but if you want this information with more detail, I encourage you to go to my complete thesis. I also send surveys to museum professionals, especially for the people who works in exhibition and education department. and what they think was important for them. I was really focused on what they, depending on the museum, this view change all the time, because they want to have more scientific approach, or they want to have a more didactic approach, depends on the museum. And opening the Glassbox. Okay, with all this information, I got all the information and I clustered them in 3 different groups. And I think that every object can be analyzed or interpret from these 3 different groups of information. So the first one is the original context, is in this case of this bird, which was its original environment. And in the case of an object, how was its use before entering the museum? If we think about an archaeological vase, for instance, how was used by people before entering the museum and before becoming a museum object? Then we have the scientific studies, is the knowledge made by scientists before and after going into the museum. And then we have the object biography, which I mentioned before about these stories of the objects, which can always gain more biographies even when the object is inside the museum. So that is really interesting, in my opinion, to show to the visitors. Here is like really fast the color palette that I use. Basically, I was trying to use colors that somehow suggest some feelings, like the green for nature in the case of the bird, the blue for the science, and this warm red for talking about culture. And then the background, then I use the orange to have a high contrast, and I use it for the interaction things inside the interface. I made an interface that looked like a little bit like a interactive infographics. So all the points that you need to do something or instructions are in orange. And I use this font, mostly Open Sans, because it's a sans serif, looks like it's a modern looking font, and also it's free, and it works well among different devices. So this was my first prototype, which was not really intuitive. And what I did was, okay, I need to test this, to iterate it and make it better, right? So I decided to do that. And I went to the Museum für Naturkunde in Berlin, and I tested there twice. And actually, the interface is based on this, in this case, which is called Vogel des Waldes, like birds of the forest. Yeah, so the interface is based in that, and I put the interface in front of that, and I asked visitors, real visitors in the museum, to test it, and I asked them some questions, how they interact with it. I took some notes, and yeah, and that first experience and their comments led to a second version, and in this version, I separate the main topics. Here I use the reflecting the layers of meanings that I mentioned before. So I separate the content in 3 different groups. I made some icons to make it more intuitive, and I made icons for the screen when you decide which topic, and I made some other icons for the infographic content. And yeah, this is how, in the end, the different topics were put. Like, this is the order, it's like the navigation tree, if you will. And yeah, I did the second test. I got a really helpful insights, and that led to the final prototype, which is in the Parcours. It's in my Parcours back. So there is a video with the complete interactions, so you can go there, watch it at your pace, and go back, go forward. And yeah. And as conclusions, I think I happy with the results, with the outcome, even though I think I could be, I always think that I could have done more, give more detail or given more content, even though I know it's huge. I also would like to have work directly with the museum, because you have to work with the people in education and the people in exhibitions to do this. Sadly, that was not the case. I tried, but was not the case. And also, I think I would like to try this, to test it, like doing the real deal testing in a museum with several screens in different objects, and to observe how they work when they are connected to each other. But that will take a museum to be willing to invest money and people to do that. So I think that's the only thing that I think it's something that for the future I would love to do. And I would love to work with archaeological objects or technical objects or even art objects. And actually, during the test, I met a guy, one of my users in the testing. He is an archaeologist from a museum in Romania, and he was really interested of trying to apply this to their museum. So we were kind of talking about, but yeah, it didn't happen. So we will see in the future what happened with the interface. And mostly I did this because I think every object in a museum, not only this really interesting bird, but I think every object in a museum deserves the chance to be appreciated, and not only for that, but to for us as people to understand the value of things, the value of all the things that are connected with us, to understand our past and future, and yeah, so on. Well, thank you very much. I hope you understand the presentation, and I will happy to answer questions if you have some.
Thank you so much, Dusan. And it was really interesting to see how much work is behind all these museums and how much stuff is going on there, which you don't see as a normal visitor. So we also already have a question from Colin. And she asks that in your research, what did you find are the main obstacles that keep museums from innovating?
Sorry, the museums, what? The last part I didn't hear it.
What keeps the museums from innovating?
Tips from museums for innovating. If I got tips from them or if I give them tips?
What do you think, what keeps the museum, or what are the main obstacles for the museums?
I got you. Okay, I think, in my opinion, I think the main obstacle would be budget, because museums do not have like huge budgets. Actually, yeah, it's some museums that don't have, even in their exhibition areas, they don't have even a designer. When they have to do an exhibition, they have like a external team doing it, and they do this by a project. So depends on the budget, in my opinion. I think there are lots of museums interested of doing innovation in their exhibitions, and especially the relationship with their visitors. But budget would be like the main reason for me, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And what do you take out of your thesis for yourself the most?
Well, I got really interested in the semiotics of objects, how the meanings of the objects, how they are related to each other, the stories behind those objects, and I got really interested in that. And I was thinking about going further and maybe studying other stuff related to objects in the future. I don't know, something about. I'm really interested about the relationship with the objects and people and the information that object holds. I mean, just a tiny piece of, I don't know, this small bird that I have there have lots of information, like the animal, how the animal was alive, people who got inspired by this bird to make art, to write poetry, the studies, because this bird is super intelligent, the studies that scientists conduct to understand animal behavior, or maybe anecdotes or mythology, how culture sees this bird. That, for instance, in Christianity, this bird, the jay, was believed to have betrayed Christ, and that's why it got this. I don't know if you know this bird, but in the side they have like a blue feathers. They are really, really beautiful, and it's supposed that the bird was covered in only those feathers, but after the betrayal, they got rid of those feathers, and now they are like ugly because of that betrayal. But I know there is a lot of things that you can get from, and I got this bird like almost like randomly. I got this bird from this antique store, and I started reading about the bird, and I think it was super interesting. I imagine what kind of information you can get from other objects.
Cool. Yeah, that's also fun. Like interesting how much you get out of this one single object.
Yeah, and I mean, sorry.
No.
No, I think, and for instance, in this case, in the interface, one of the critiques of my supervisors during the defense was there is a lot of information, and I know that, but it was, for me, it was an example to show that look in this small object. It's a really humble bird. You can get all this information. I mean, it was to show like the different possibilities. Maybe that will change with other museum that is focused more in science. They will get rid of the I don't know, the poetry. Maybe let's focus on how the studies of the science regarding, I don't know, the intelligence, its anatomy, and so on. But I think it's a really interesting thing, and in my opinion, has a lot of potential. But I would love to try it in a museum with all the different screens and see actually if people learn something, actually if they feel connected somehow with the object in some level. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Maybe you can find that out soon or later on.
Hopefully.
So thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, guys.
Now we're gonna switch to Paul.
Okay.
And
Good luck, Paul.
Rote Liebe.
Thank you so much, Dusan, for your project. It's really interesting to hear about it. And you can go on his web and read more about it there. And now I'm happy to introduce Michael Wehner, who collaborated with the city of Cologne in his bachelor thesis. And please enjoy. Ask questions in the chat if you have any.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm very happy to be here and to present my bachelor thesis. I hope that you can hear me, and then I will just open up my presentation now. And there we go. Is it working? Okay. So again, a very warm welcome to my presentation. I'm going to talk like 15 minutes about what I did in my bachelor thesis. And then there's, I think, 10 minutes for a Q&A session. The title of my thesis is Co-Creative Spatial Design with the City of Cologne. And more specifically, I collaborated with one department of the city, that is Department 30, and that is responsible for law, procurement, and insurance. But don't worry, I'm not going to talk about law in this topic, in this presentation. Okay, so Department 30 is a pilot department within the city of Cologne. That means there's some processes, some renovations going on and so forth. And one of that is, one of the objectives is spatial concepts for their new offices. And that's the topic that I worked on during my bachelor thesis. So the goal for the department was to develop social and meeting rooms. And of course, to align that with the department's objective, the working methods and the working culture they have there. By the way, the nice pictures that are shown here were mostly taken by Theresa Tropschuh. She did some photographs during the process. Okay, so now to my goals. As the goals for the department were to get new room concepts, my goals were a bit different. I didn't come there as an interior designer or as an interior architect, but my goal was to design the process, to do consulting for the whole department and for the employees, and to provide them with methods and invite the right people to talk to and ask the right questions. So the results that I will present here are room concepts, but the real work that I did was more about process and service design. While working with the department, overall, I conducted 12 workshops with the employees of the department. And during those workshops, I applied and explained methods from like different workshop methods and service design methods and from agile working and so forth. So I will start with the exploration phase and then move on to the ideation phase. The first one to gain insights about how they really work, what is the situation right now and what they really need. And then the ideation phase about developing first ideas and concepts. At KIST, the bachelor thesis is separated in proposals, which are more like research based, and then the real thesis work. And I also did my proposal in collaboration with the department. And there I gained 5 key findings concerning the approach. So the first one is that the process has to work with co-creation. That means I don't come there and tell them you need a sofa, you need a couch, you need these colors, but the ideas need to be developed together. The next one is transparency, meaning that as soon as you develop ideas and concepts, you have to share them with the whole organization so that the whole what is being done is transparent. Then prototyping, that is really crucial that you do prototypes with words, with pictures, with cardboard, anything. Then inspiration, that you give the employees of an organization inspiration for the process and for the idea generation. We also did like an office safari where we visited other creative or new working environments. And then the last one, but probably the most important one, that the process needs to be user-centered. That the whole concepts that are being developed needs to be focused on the user's needs. Okay, I started the process mainly by looking at the spatial organization, how it is now. Here you can see like room plans which are acquired and a photo. In general, the department sits at the Stadthaus here in Cologne-Deutz, Köln-Deutz. And it's not really interesting for you at which floors and so on they sit, but you can see they're really scattered around the building. And the Stadthaus is divided in 2 buildings, and overall they sit in 6 floors and 2 buildings, and that is not really nice for their collaboration. As I told you, I worked together with a group of this department. Those were overall 9 people, and it was really nice because we could work quite freely together. We could decide what process we do next, what methods, and so on. And they came from all departments or all divisions of that department. So from the law division, from allocation, from insurance, from administration, and so forth. Okay, so now I will tell you what we really did in the exploration. First, we defined together the reason for existence for the whole department and its divisions. That was really nice because then later when we developed the concepts, we could really aim them towards those reasons for existence. As a next step, we filled out, or the project group filled out these service blueprints. And there's different lines and columns here, but the idea is that you map and understand processes systematically. So I did that for different divisions of the department, and as you can see here, that was for the administration. And the 2 main tasks that they have are here in the center: routine tasks and giving aid to other people or helping them with daily tasks. Here it was really crucial for me that I added a line for chances, so that you don't only understand what is happening there, but then you also lead the discussion towards chances that could be improved and so on. As I already told you before, I also always try to implement some workshop methods and so on. And this is just a really easy game that you can do at the start of workshops, where you draw portraits of each other without looking at the paper. And if you haven't found me yet, I'm the one in the middle. And those were just some methods I implemented during those 12 workshops I did with the employees, hoping that they would also learn something about working methods and workshop methods and so on. As a next step, I conducted a survey for the department. I also already had some like qualitative insights from those service blueprints, and now I also wanted some quantitative insights about forms of work, work locations, customer contact, satisfaction of the employees, but also of their users, of their customers, then direction of communication, if they more talk to other departments of the city or if they more have internal communication. And there we also gathered a lot of useful insights. The survey was open for 1 week, and all in all, 70 people, 70 employees of the department then participated in it. As a last step, I tried to also implement the end user perspective. So they have a lot of internal tasks, but the real reason of existence or for existence for this department is to give like law advice for other departments. So I let some employees of the department also interview other departments and so on, what they need. And there we also gathered some useful insights about room size, if customers want to be like welcomed at the rooms of Department 30, and what technical equipment they need and so forth. As a conclusion of the exploration, I did another workshop where we looked at all the key insights and also filmed a video together. which then summed up all the insights that we found and made it really transparent for the rest of the department what we did and what we also found. Okay, so now we're at like 2/3 of this presentation, or maybe at half. So let's take a sip of water and then continue. Now I will present the ideation phase. It was the second phase, and it was all about idea generation and concept generation. As a first step, I let the members of the project group define an opportunity question. Some people also call it a how might we question. And the aim of that is to focus the goals of the ideation phase and to give a clear direction for the work that is following. It was then how might we, as the project group, redesign and design social and meeting spaces for Department 30. The special thing about this is that we willingly let out then single offices and double offices, and was more about social and meeting spaces. As the second step for the ideation, I prepared some atmospheres, and then the employees of the department could choose those atmospheres, kind of like a mood board that then functions as a direction for the interior that we defined afterwards. So as you can see here, I prepared some atmospheres that were mapped onto two directions, from private to public and from warm to cold. And then they picked them. And as you can see here, I used some transparent foil then to define those zones, those atmospheric zones on the room plans. The nice thing about this was that then you could still see the plan underneath, and that you can still adapt the size and so on. Here's an example of 2 floors where the members of the project group then defined the atmospheres. And that was a good starting point for the further development of concepts. As a next step, I prepared services and interior. The services were different things, for example, games for recreation time, showers, but also more immaterial things like transparency, or, okay, now we're getting back to material things like a projector or different seating opportunities. And those were then selected by the employees. We did some dot voting, and then that was another good starting point for the real interior. For the interior, I prepared some models with the laser cutter at KIST. You can see here at the right that there were seats and sofas and tables and so on, but I also did some blank tiles where you could fill in spontaneous ideas. That was then kind of a playful interaction and a playful fill out of the rooms that were available. And you can see 2 final prototypes here, 2 final concepts. As I said, this is only like a prototypical interior. And as the next step, I have a date with the manager of the department and with the room management of the city to then see which of that will be really bought and which will be really implemented. As the last step of the process, I prepared a final presentation. As you can see, there were executives from the department present, but also other relevant stakeholders from the city. And the goal was to present the results, the concepts that we developed, to involve the relevant stakeholders and to get feedback from that. I prepared the whole thing as an exhibition, so there were the processes and the results were like attached to the walls, as you can see here, with moderation cards, but also with a projector. And it was really nice because the project group also presented many of the aspects and of the results. Here you can see some more pictures. Some people were attending digitally on a laptop. At the bottom picture, you can see that the final room concepts were then attached to the wall. And there were some really interesting opportunities that emerged afterwards. People from the room management told me that the department will really benefit from this process people from the from higher levels of the city administration told me that they would like to get those insights and work with the project group together for future projects. And I got really nice feedback from the project group that they really liked working with me, that they were amazed by the different methods that I brought to them, and also from the service design approach, and that they liked the models, and that I always did follow-up documentation and the energizers we did and so forth. So all in all, I was really happy to do my bachelor thesis with an external partner. It was quite a challenge, especially also due to Corona, because in the first weeks I couldn't really collaborate with them. But I'm glad I did my thesis with them, and I think that's the end of my presentation. Thanks to Tamara and Angi for moderating this, and to the whole Parcours team, and I'm excited to hear some questions.
Thank you so much, Paul. Really interesting presentation. Yeah, and also nice if you have questions which you didn't post in the chat yet for our visitors, here you also have directly Paul's email. That's amazing. Maybe an interesting question to start with would be, how did you even get in contact with the city? Like, how did it evolve that you got this opportunity to work with them?
Thanks for asking the question. Well, there's two different things. One is that there is official collaboration between KIST and the city of Cologne. I think it's going over 3 years, and each semester there's one midterm project over 6 weeks, where then one specific task is being worked on by a student group. But this one evolved kind of differently. Anastasia Bonda did the interior and the room concept for the Zukunftslabor of the city. That is the future collaboration lab.
Maybe shortly, could you stop sharing the screen, then we can see your lovely face.
Sure.
Great. Okay.
Okay. So as I told you, there was a small group of students who did the interior and the concept for the future lab of the city, the Zukunftslabor. And in that process, the manager of Department 30 got to know KIST, and then he approached and asked if anybody would be willing to help them with that process, and there I was. So it was really nice collaborating with them, because the manager of the department also gave me a lot of freedom and a lot of trust to work with his employees and to just decide what we do and how we develop.
That's just amazing. How was it for you to work with them together, and also how did they see you as you're still a student, or you have been a student?
I was really amazed that they always took me seriously. I think sometimes it's a challenge to find the right tone, so that you don't use only service design vocabulary and only English terms and so on, because that will scare some employees off, especially if they're older and not so close or good with English. So that was for me always a challenge, to find the right vocabulary, find the right tone to address topics and to work with them. But besides that, as I said, I was really amazed that they always took me seriously, that they used the methods that I proposed, and yeah, it was a good collaboration. Maybe there will be some follow-up process. I don't know.
That would be cool. I have another question for you. Showed the atmospheres and how you decided with them how it will look like later, and I would be curious to know how you came up with the idea of choosing atmospheres.
That's a good question. I didn't mention that in the presentation due to time restrictions. This step of the process was kind of inspired by an architect, or by an architectural office. the office is called Advos, and they have their office in the Netherlands, I think, and they also do it like professionally, that they go to organizations and do redesign of their working environments, and they also do that in their process. So they also have an offer or cards of atmospheres, and then let the employees and other stakeholders choose what they want their working environment to look like. And I didn't copy the atmospheres themselves, but the idea was copied from them and then adapted the chosen atmospheres to the city administration.
Cool, that's nice to hear. Ongi, do you maybe have another questions for Paul? We don't have any questions yet in the chat. No?
Doesn't seem so.
Is there something you had the most trouble with it, except for finding the right tone and words?
I would say maybe it was time management due to Corona. As I said in the start of the collaboration, or at least in the start of the thesis collaboration, that was like the peak of Corona restrictions in Germany. So there was like 5 or 6 weeks where I couldn't really meet with them and only write emails and so on. And that just really slows the process. I have the feeling that digital collaboration is always so much slower than personal collaboration, and a lot gets lost in translation and so on. So then afterwards, I had trouble to find enough time for ideation, and the ideas that I presented earlier, those were mostly developed within like 2 workshops of each 1.5 hours, where we defined the atmospheres, the interior, and the services. So those were really dense workshops, and I think the concepts are really nice, given that we only spent like 3 hours on them, or the employees spent only 3 hours on them. But I would say time management then was the toughest part of it.
Okay, so we're getting questions in.
So we have a question from Elena, who asks you, can you explain more about your outcome? How will the office looks like, feel, or work different from now if the city takes your suggestion?
Maybe I will then quickly share my screen again. Is it working? So here you can see 2 models, 2 prototypes that we developed together. And for example, here on the left, you can see 1 floor, and that's the 5th floor. And here at the bottom, there's like a tea kitchen at the moment, and there is really just 1 microwave and maybe 1 water cooker, and that's it. And then it's just really about simple changes, putting like a standing desk and 2 chairs there, and maybe a water fountain, so that that people also eat lunch there, and that there's more informal talk between the people. Then they have here in the middle, you can see there's quite a lot of free space. They want to have some plants there, a sofa, maybe like a little Besprechungswaggon, we called it. It's hard to translate. Like a corner where you can talk and we can also exchange. And then here at the top, you can see that's like a bigger meeting room. There they want to have a few tables, different seating opportunities, but also a big screen to work on different things together. Like if they have room plans, if they have plans of the city, or if they just talk about finances, they need a big screen to talk about that together. And that's now just the explanation of 1 floor. And as you can see, sometimes the changes are really basic, and you would think, wow, they need to have a table where they can have lunch together, but sometimes it's not there. And then it's good to just start there, and then you can later iterate that again and maybe improve it and do more fancy stuff.
Amazing. So we have another question from Heinrich Hafke, and he asks, How did you manage to integrate the creative approach and methods of service design in an environment with mostly bureaucratic workflows? Also an interesting question.
I just stopped my screen so that you can see me again. Thank you for the question. Well, it's a tough question. I would say it's again about the tone, that you don't scare people off by using a lot of English terms and so on. And then people, of course, are willing to collaborate. And if you say that, if you tell them like, this is just a small game where we draw the portraits and so on, they also have a lot of fun doing that. That's clear. And then I would say the reputation of the city administration is worse than they really are. A lot of people think that there's only, in the city administration, there's only old people that only do their task and never see anything else. But then what it really is really different. There's also young people working there that also know some agile working. And then it was for me really nice to collaborate with them.
Okay, cool, thank you. And now we will come to finish from our first blog for today. Thank you again to all our presented works from there. So thank you to Doro, Dusan, Aki, and Paul. And now we're going to have a break for 1 hour and we will be back at 4 p.m. So please join later again in when we have 3 other presentations coming up. Thank you so much.
Rote Liebe.
Hello and welcome to our second part of the Saturday talks. Really delighted that we continue now. So now we're going to have 3 more talks and the first is going to be from Linus Van Doren. Enjoy. And feel free to ask questions whenever you like in the chat.
Okay. Hi guys, my name is Linus. I hope that I'm live now. Okay, good. Yeah, wait, let me share my screen so we can get into my master thesis. Okay, here we go. I wrote about prolonging product lifetimes and product life cycles in particular. So usually when we think about like product lifetimes, we think about breaking parts and all the ways that appears. Like around designers, it's fairly common that this is a very important topic to tackle. And I specifically focused on furniture waste. There's a lot of other ways to do, but in the European Union alone, there's about 10,000 tons of furniture waste every year. To put that into perspective, that's about the weight of 990 Eiffel Towers that are just like all burned and end up in landfills, all in couches and old cupboards every year. So to change that is obviously fairly important. And when we tackle this problem, we usually think about the technical product lifetime. So that's parts breaking, phones breaking, refrigerators breaking. But if you look at the numbers, that part is actually only about 22% of the objects we own and we replace are actually really broken. So the question becomes, why do we replace the other 78% of products we own if they're not broken? And this is because a product does not only have a technical lifespan, but also a psychological product lifespan. And that's basically the time we perceive an object to be valuable. So if we want to really stimulate sustainability and like sustainable consumption, and that it is much more interesting to actually tackle the psychological product lifetime than to do with the technical ones. And of course, there will be some products like technological stuff like phones and laptops where the technical aspect in that category is bigger, but overall in all objects, it's only about 22%. So the 4 out of 5 times we replace something is actually because we lose the value, the perceived value in that. So the idea behind stimulating a longer psychological product lifetime is to basically prolong the time we perceive something to be as valuable. And one of the most powerful things to do that is attachment to the product. Because every time we replace something, we abandon our relationship with that object. And the stronger our attachment to that object is, the harder this process of replacement or abandoning becomes, and the less likely we are to do it. So I set out in my master thesis to basically prolong product lifetime through more attachment to the product and how we can design for more attachment. So how we can, as a designer, like when we come up with an idea for something, be like, okay, just like we think about repairability and things like that, we think about how can we actually influence the user to be more attached to the object in the long term. And to basically cut this short, because I only got 15 minutes, there's 4 main strategies to do that generally in like scientific literature are proven to result in like stronger attachment to things. And that one is self-expression. So if we are able to express ourselves through the object, it's something that we like to do. And if we use it to express ourselves and express our identity, it's obviously more important to us. The next one is investing in the product. So if we invest not only money, but also time and work and effort into something, we tend to enjoy those things a lot more. There's studies that show that people who build together like generic IKEA boxes like the stuff they like the outcome of the box about like 63% more than people who were given like the exact same thing pre-built. So it's a fairly powerful motivator to like grow attached to something. Pleasure is another one, which basically means that in the category where the object works, it provides a greater value than other ones, mostly than in secondary categories like that don't serve the primary function, but that basically make the usage more enjoyable, because if we enjoy it, well, we obviously like it more. And the third one is the probably easiest to like grasp, and first one you think, which is memories. That if you are able to produce memories over time with an object or with something like that, or if it's gifted to you, then it becomes more important to us and has more value. So this is fairly strong, but also fairly hard to plan for, because you cannot really plan that something is gifted by a loved one, or that you will acquire it in like a really memorable moment. But what you can do is you can emphasize the memories that build up over time with the object by choosing materials that age really well and that show the shared history of the object and the user throughout time, and that you then can see on the object. Yeah, I built a kitchen, and here's why. Basically, the idea was to test this strategy on an object and to just like decide on one, and I chose the kitchen. because it hits all these 4 strategies fairly well. So you can, you have a fairly utilitarian object that you can customize, and you can gain superior utility in the working process, which leads to pleasure in the working experience, in the cooking experience. You can customize it, self-expression, through the customization process. You can also really invest a lot of time in it by setting it up and like building it up to your needs. And then obviously, since it's a daily interaction object that's already like kind of there for a longer period of time, you have time to build up these memories. And to topple all of that, kitchen furniture is the furniture that produces the most furniture waste by a ton. So for some reason, we decide to throw out kitchens more than anything else in the furniture waste category. And this is probably due to some, well, inherent flaws, let's call them flaws, that were that came up through like the development of modern kitchens, and especially the Frankfurter Küche, which was basically always a fitted kitchen. So you always put it to the tiny room, and by like condensing living spaces and like making a single-use kitchen, not single-use, but like one kitchen per one household, making that more accessible, that ended in like cramping it into small spaces. So you always have things that are fitted perfectly to one thing and that are like very much not adaptable to another space. So if you take it to another space, you move. Like if I take the chair right here I'm sitting on, I can just put it in a new apartment. It would probably be fine. With a kitchen, that's most of the times not possible unless you live in a place that has like a huge place for a kitchen where you can actually put like islands in there. But like most of the architecture that we live in Western Europe, and since it's the room, the layout of the room is like set up for tinier kitchens, so you end up with something that's fairly condensed. And to basically check this theory, I made model room studies. So I built basically different room sizes and made scenarios where I would take the individual elements of the kitchen and bring them to another room and basically grow the kitchen and reuse the elements. So I grew them up all the way from like 5 to 9 to 13, 13 square meters, and then back to 9. And the idea was basically to find out how you would need to set up stuff that you could actually reuse it, and make it modular in a sense that you could take it to your new apartment, to your new living situation, or that you could adapt something if families grow or whatever, like the life scenario changes. And to basically allow this, I knew very early on that I would need to break up the kitchen counter. Usually that's one of the most monolithic pieces of furniture we have. It's really huge. It's one piece. It's cut to the length you need it to fit in, and like then that's it. You like just cannot put it anywhere else. There's cutouts for the things and stuff, and there's like no way that this thing could ever adapt to a new scenario. So I knew very early on that I would need it to break that up into elements. And yeah, that's what I did. And to secure the elements, I used a steel rope connection that like goes around the counter. So the first ideas was basically to have a modular frame and then a modular counter that goes on top with it. These are some of, sorry, I'm looking at a second screen right now. That's why you always see the side of my face. Yeah, so you have basically a modular frame with modular pieces on top of it. I tested this with like a cutting board to basically make it a little bit more of like a real material model, but still smaller size. So I had like a piece of wood that's basically chopped into 3, and you could take apart like one piece and then set a new rope to it and tie it back up together, and then you had a fairly sturdy structure. That worked really well. So I made a second model of this board, and I tested it for a couple months in my kitchen as a cutting board to like check withstands of like abuse with like water and washing and stuff like this, because it's all, well, important in a kitchen scenario. And it turned out to work pretty well. So I implemented it in the real life kitchen, and you have this groove on the counter that goes all around that is then tightened with like an Allen key and a rope lock. Yeah, so yeah, it goes around and basically tightens everything together. To basically have a hard piece of the counter of like wood elements to like arrange around, I decided to cast a sink from concrete. Just because I like the material and I think it does really create a nice patina over time. And I was, yeah, always interested in like brutalist architecture and the way that the concrete in those buildings, just like with being a fairly cold material, does create something that is in the detail very beautiful over time. And yeah, so I went for concrete. I made a sink that it's omnidirectional, so you can turn it in any direction, which then goes together with the counter where you can place it anywhere in the counter. So if you have a water outlet, for example, where you want to like hook up your sink, you're very much constrained by that and you need to put it in this place. And with like a square sink in this format right now, you can just do that. You can change it every time. It's fairly simple. The steel rope also goes around the sink. There's a groove cast into the concrete. Yeah, and yeah, this is like just process photos of the sink casting process, which is something that's fairly a lot of work, but I think it paid off. Drain and overflow are all cast directly into the sink, so you can basically directly hook it up and it should work. Yeah, it's omnidirectional, so you can have it in any direction you want and just place it in the frame. The frame itself also needs to be modular because you want to basically extend and subtract it when you have different scenarios. So I decided on a steel frame that also uses like steel ropes to tighten it up. So I have basically individual elements here that are like stuck together with this like just normal steel square tubing that you stick together with like a tiny connection piece. And then the steel rope itself is responsible for the tension, so you can set it up and basically have different lengths in it. The elements are all set up to be either 30 or 60 centimeters, with 60 centimeters being a standard for things like dishwashers and stoves and stuff like that. So you would be able to extend it in that grid and make the kitchen smaller or bigger depending on where you want to take it and or how big you want it to be. You can also change the height with the same system. So like for working surface areas, someone my height with like 183 would have a different height than if you're like 175, just be more comfortable to cut on. So you can change that very easily. Yeah, with working in this, oh wait, I can show you, wait, I wanted to show you a tiny animation of the like taking the kitchen thing apart. It's basically the idea: you have a smaller element, you take it apart, you add another one, you put it back together, you're there with like a bigger setup. Okay, wrong file, here we go. Okay, if you're working within this 1360 grid constraint, like with these 1360 grid elements, at some point you realize that there's always going to be a gap at the corner though, because I talked earlier about how most apartments are kind of designed to have a fitted kitchen. So there's just no space for like having something that's freestanding or something like this. So working in a 30 to 60 grid, you always have a gap, or most likely you have a gap to the wall, because it doesn't perfectly fit, because most apartments are not designed on a 30 to 60 grid. So I knew that I would need to solve these 30, 20 centimeter gaps that are gonna occur when you set it up and when you wanna hook it up to a wall. And I knew that I needed to build an element that's basically flexible to fill this gap. And I worked with living hinges for mold building before, so I had the idea to basically curl up the side of the board to the wall, and like in this tiny model here, like you could just bend it up the wall and then it would perfectly fit. You would get a seal, would not be as messy. So I basically build a living hinge for the wall, which is easier said than done. There's like a lot of prototypes that went into this, because you need like a solid underlaying structure, and then you need something soft and flexible on top that's still kind of durable, and that would bend up the wall. I decided on linoleum because it's a natural material. It comes in all kinds of colors, and it's used for flooring usually. There's also like stuff for furniture desktops, which I used, which is like a little bit more fine, I guess. But it's fairly durable, so you will get some scratches, but I cut up some croissants on the linoleum to basically test it out. And then the hinge curves up on the wall. So every time you like go to a new place and you wanna change the size of the hinge, you just take out one of these elements, and then you bend up the linoleum a little bit more and just like seal it to the wall. I'm gonna show you another animation of that, which basically then is something like this. So you take out one element, and then it just becomes shorter. So by using different sizes in the elements here, you can actually mix and match them to get everything down to, I think, yeah, under a centimeter. So the last piece, you can just bend the linoleum. Yeah. Wrong file again. Yeah, and then that's basically it. This way you can fit the kitchen to any place you want. You can extend it. You can set it up the way you like. So you have like a lot of options in the longevity of itself. Like it allows you to actually take it another place, and then it encourages you to like spend time setting it up. It's fairly simple, but you still get to put in the work, so you can invest into the project. And with the material choices, it should age well, and you should set it up in like a way that serves you well, so you kind of hit all the 4 strategies. Yeah, that's basically it.
Thank you. Such an amazing work. You can see that really a lot of time and effort went into it. It looks really lovely. I hope you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool. My screen just froze for a second. Yeah, thank you so much. What would you think of who did you think of while you designed your kitchen, and what do you think who would benefit most from this flexibility?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a, there's a lot of conceptual stuff in it as well. Like the idea in choosing this kitchen was to like basically also prove a point on this attachment strategies, which is something that's it's fairly hard to do overall. It's like probably impossible to scientifically prove in the time frame I have, because we're talking about years and years and years. So it was clear to me that this was a limitation I would probably not be able to solve, but I still wanted to like try it and put it to like a test and basically build it. And when when I went through the process, you get caught up in a lot of details, like this modularity aspect of it, which is like, it's very necessary for long life cycles to work. But it's like just the first step, and just to like take this first step is already to like have it work well and be nice and beautiful is already so much work. And then I also wanted to build something that's like a little bit more open. I don't really like closed up kitchens with like everything behind cupboards. I don't think it's good to work in. I have all my stuff hanging, and I think that's a personal choice. Like, I would probably still work on like building like underground shelving for the thing right now, but well, COVID happened. I can't go to the workshops, so that kind of makes it harder. Yeah, who is it for? I think in the state it is right now, that's not so clearly defined. And the idea, of course, is that it would fit anywhere. And theoretically it does. But like right now, I think you have to like open kitchens like that for it to like use it. And you need to, the way I have it in the photos right now, you need to obviously sacrifice some shelf space. And you need to carry up like 60 kilos of concrete anywhere you want to take it, which, well, you can do, but.
Well, maybe therefore you don't throw it out as quickly as you would if it wasn't. We got another question in the chat from Thomas Klimek. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly. And he's asking you, what are further plans with the outcome? Do you want to produce it in a higher amount and maybe in a cooperation with a company?
I actually haven't really thought about that much. Also because everything's kind of on hold right now. It feels a little bit like that. So like, yes, I would really enjoy to further work more on it. And yeah, if I have the chance to produce it with a company, hell yeah, I would do that. And of course there's like, this is the first prototype, you know, it's the first prototype of the sink, it's the first prototype of the frame. And there's some tiny details that still need to be worked out, like by just using more precision milled steel, so things are like a little less wobbly with the like the tiny things. It's on the millimeters. And then the bigger part is to design a complementary like underlaying system. So right now you can fit any standard things under it, like dishwashers and whatnot. But of course, it would be very nice to also have like underground not underground, like underlaying shelving under the counter that works in the same like modular way, and also doesn't like break with the, like, let's say with the looks of the whole fairly rough industrial thing that's so open, which I like a lot. So the idea would kind of to develop that, and I was planning on doing this spring, but well, that didn't happen. But yeah, I hope I answered that question.
I have another question for you, Linus.
Yes,
I was wondering what made you decide to base your concept around a kitchen. So it comes back a bit more to the very beginning of your concept.
Yeah.
Like the modularity of a kitchen, because of the tools that, you know, might depend on someone's need, or the life expectancy of a kitchen. Yeah.
So in theory, the theory of the increasing product attachment should work on a bunch of things. So the theoretical concept I just like barely scratched in the beginning. They should work on basically any object, any physical object. But of course, to take this further and like to actually have an outcome that's physical and that's there and that like goes the extra step, I at one point just had to like decide on something. I would just be like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And like I said, I think the need, since in the furniture space at least, kitchens produce the most amount of waste, and they're probably one of the most unflexible things. That was like one main argument, but also like I already said, it's something that like allows a lot of room to like work this in. Like I think it's harder to do with something like a chair or something like this, or maybe not harder, but it's like just would be a little bit of a different thing. Like you would not, for example, you wouldn't have to go into modularity that much, which I kind of also wanted to do. I like modular things, but yeah. So at one point it was just like, okay, I feel that I can work on this for like half a year and like just put everything into that. I like the thing because I enjoy cooking, and I don't know, it was at that point it was just like, okay, you also need to choose on something. So I chose a kitchen. I think it's,
so you ended up putting your personal feeling for the concept.
it's yeah, basically, like I already said, it's there's like a lot of like fact-based merits to it. Like this really needs to be improved, otherwise we wouldn't throw away like 2.5 million tons of it every year. So it makes sense to do it, you know. It's not like a novelty thing or anything, but of course, yes, I could have also built something different on the concept, but yeah, I decided on a kitchen, and I'm fairly happy with the decision so far.
It looks great. It looks great. Great outcome. And thank you so much, Linus, for your presentation. That was very, very interesting. We had like a lot of people watching you, so that was great.
Okay.
So we're gonna have the next talk with Yutong Chen in few minutes. So we'll be back. Thank you so much, Linus.
Bye, guys.
Rote Liebe.
welcome back. Thank you so much, Linus, for your very interesting talk, your presentation. And now we're gonna have next Yutong Chen. Enjoy. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and then we will have a Q&A session after his presentation.
Oh, I think on YouTube now. Okay. Hi peoples. I'm so exciting right now. I miss so much the presentation with audience. Hi, 27 people. And my topic is about dating app, about young people, about loneliness. And now I'm gonna share my screen and start my presentation. Okay, I think right now you can see my screen. What is bridging us may also divide us. Okay. So Tinder describes itself as the world's most popular app for meeting new people. And yes, it is pretty famous, bad or good reputation. So when I first arrived Germany, I use it for finding a new friend. Because at that moment, I don't have any friends. I'm looking for a place to stay. It was a hard time. And I did match with some interesting people. We had a nice conversation, and suddenly they disappeared. The conversation suddenly over. It was sad at first time, and this situation start repeat over and over, and I start to accept the reality. After I using this as my master thesis topic, I did some research with some people online and find that this phenomenon just one problem of this dating app. Besides of that, fake profile, slow reply or no reply, sexual harassment, all of that became a reason to make people frustrated. 45% people feel frustrated by using the dating set or dating app. It is annoying. It is thesis. I'm focused on the user. I focus on the people between 16 to 24, because these people, just like me, experience some big change in their life, such as go to high school, go to college, graduate, and go to work. They are leaving their old support web behind and need to establish a new social circles. And during that time, people need to befriend strangers and need to meet new friends. But the dating app and the other social network so frustrating. So how to provide an online atmosphere for user to create and maintain meaningful connections without pressure is my research question. With this question, I did some research for finding some deeper reason. Of course, when you're facing this problem, you will get some reason easily, like if this person don't have an advantage with appearance or too shy to talk even online behind the screen, or he or she just a boring people. In real life, people can find a new friend, such as, for example, like a freshman in university, within one semester. The longest needs almost a year. During this period of time, it is very hard. So, but the social dating app is designed for connecting people, make the communication easier. Why is so make people disappointing? So I'm searching for a deeper reason. The first reason is called instant gratification. Tinder is brilliant. It's providing a new interaction way of the selecting people. is expanding the market is great, but also this swap thing is simple and effective, but it also let brains think you just have a positive, successful social behavior. The brain told you, good job, someone like you, repeat it. But in fact, this behavior did not helping you finding a friend in real life. It's just for confidence boosting. That's why this is the main reason of people, one of the main reason for people using Tinder or any other Tinder imitators. They're not for chat, they're not for looking friend, they just want to know how many people like me. And the second reason is called images management. The people always put the best side on the internet to create a best images. Through these images, they can gain some benefits from it. So that's why people upload fake, even using deceive, like upload fake profile, and yeah, that's why I met someone offline and feels there's a totally different person. The last one is a fragmented focus. Right now we have many ways to kill time, to have a company like YouTube is a good way, stream live, or video game. But they're based on research. Only face-to-face interaction, which means only meet friend in real life can solve the problem. Can give you real company, like you find a friend is solving the loneliness problem. Also, after the research about the user, I focus on the exist product, such as the matching algorithm. The matching algorithm already developed for many years. The first generation is kind of like a supermarket of love. People browse the profile of people's, can find someone, can find true love. The second generation is like a love real estate agent. The agent provides some people, it might be suitable for you. The latest generation is abandoned all the complicated algorithm, just the location and the appearance. Of course, this is just for user. Behind that is also there's a complex algorithm behind that. Since this location and the appearance is simple and effective, also provide each user independent exposure chance to show themselves. It's fair. Also have something disadvantage, like I mentioned before. I also did a survey with 200 people and make a semi-structured interview with 25 of them. Most of them are female. Summarize with this 4 type of persona. From this persona, some need is come up, and the first is that they need a friendly and a positive social atmosphere. They want to match with interesting people. They need a quick reply. They want some supervision system to avoid sexual harassment. Sometimes they just need for a company. Maybe they don't want a real friend. They just need a company to kill time, or like because of the boredom, not loneliness. And for younger people, they want to get some advice from the others. Based on that, and I have my solutions. Now I can show you through a click dummy. My solution is a platform with of a location base. Is a 4-person chat group. It's called United. This name is from English word united. I move you as icon. This icon consists for 3 parts. Each part are different, and they look like talk to each other. You may wondering why there's only 3 parts. This is and because they became a U. Which means they need you to complete this 4-person chat group. After login, there's a home page. In here, you can see what kind of people nearby. If I'm interested in this Larry, I can click this photo and the name, age, and 1 sentence to describe himself. Also, the job, the education background, how far. Also, music taste, because music taste is relative with the personality. And here's more information like hometown or hobby. If I like this person, I can click want to meet to increase the chance I can group up with this person. After everything setting up, I can click to match to start a conversation. In this page, I can see what kind of people I match with. At the beginning of the match, at the beginning of the conversation, the system will providing a icebreaking question to open the conversation. And each user have a unique chat bubble. And after the conversation start, if I interested with this person, I can click the name in here. I can like him, like her. If so, they will be saved into this user's file. If the other member of this chat group dislike this person will be removed from the group. You here also can ask some help, like more topic. If I can get along with this group, I can change or simply leave the group. If the conversation going well, the system will recommend some place or activities to go or to do. It happened within 1 day. After 24 hours, the chat group will disband automatically. In the end, there was something like a scoreboard. They will show how many likes you gain and a title, and start a new one. In this solution, because we all of us have a WhatsApp or phone numbers, so I don't need to make it stay here to start a conversation, daily conversation. So this group chat is like another filter, because besides of the appearance, people can tell is this person attractive or not within 1 second through the appearance. They also can tell the one person's conscience level and the intelligence level from a 5 seconds chat scenes of this person with others. So I want to using this group chat to let them people have a more understand with the person you match with. If they really like this person, then maybe they can exchange the phone number or WhatsApp. They can continue. I also providing a chance to let them meet offline. Accurate the process of the people became a real friend. So I think that's all my presentation. And here's a question for you. I really want to know, do you like this icon, or is the icon deliver my concept or not? So I really want to hear your opinion. Please leave comment below or leave comment on my page at Online Parcours. So thank you for listening, and thank for the Parcours teams organizing the whole wonderful experience, online experience is really great. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. So feel free to comment. I personally like the U. And I would have directly a more pragmatic question. So when I sign up to the app and I'm new, will I be already in a group, or would I still need to get my people until I'm in one group?
When you are freshman in here, you will need to upload your profile as a four photo. Oh, I want to show it. So let me try to show it. Okay. In the users page in here, you can upload your photos and describe and other settings. And also in here, there's how many. It will show how many likes you gain in the past. And this you will see the home page. So that's the first step of the register in this app.
Okay, cool. So we're getting some comments saying great work, and you also, it's inspiring for Shumin Luo, which is great to hear. Maybe I have a question. So you did a lot of research on why dating apps don't work the way they work, also by yourself, by your own experiences. And did you ever find out why that is, that people just stop writing?
Yeah, some reason that such like they satisfy with the matching part, not the chatting part. Also because this is a fast speed era in here. We can't focus on one meaningful conversation. Like we need to spend some time, put some effort on keep maintain the conversation going, like finding a new topic. When we're doing this, here's a new notification like, hey, you match with the new girls. A prettier, closer, like, so you give up this current conversation. So in my design, yeah, it's also, you also can change group quickly, like 10 group per day, but you also just browse the chat things like the others members, so you will have a better understanding of what kind of people of the group members. So I want to through this way to like also maybe not fast like Tinder, but it's also have give you a better understanding of what kind of people. So maybe could provide a better atmosphere for social.
I think people are really interested in knowing when will that be online? When will they be able to try it?
Yeah, yeah. Currently, I'm planning to put this on the market still, but I still need to do some marketing research on what kind of happening in right now, for real. So maybe soon.
Well, great. I will probably try it. I must admit.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have any other question in the chat?
Oh.
No, not so far.
Okay. No.
Or maybe what was for you the biggest trouble you had during your proposal, as we have some minutes left?
Okay. The biggest trouble?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I have some friend help me to do the survey and the interview. During my interview, I also feel again the frustrating part of the social online. Like a lot of people just disappear. I was sad, and I need to maintain all the conversation and summarize it and keep notes all of them. So I think that's a hard part. And in the future, I think I will be using some more scientific way or smart way, like with a software, help me to record all the chat history, so have a more correct data.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. So now we're going to have a very short break, and then we're going to continue with the next graduate talk. See you in a sec. So thank you very much for your presentation, Yutong. And last but not least, we're going to have a final presentation from our graduates today before we change to our detail sets. So please welcome Dominik Schmitz. As always, ask questions in the comment section.
Hello, I'm Dominik. Welcome. I will tell you about my bachelor thesis, and it's basically the story from a small project, from a nice idea to a fully automated 3D printing farm, and yeah, like 40,000 parts on the left of me. So I will tell the story how a small project become a company and how we did some things differently and what we learned. So I will share my screen and show you a little bit of the outcome. It's actually a book, so we will just go through some pages and I will tell along. What you see here is a small printing press. It's the Open Press project. I have to explain it a little bit because it's the base of what my bachelor thesis is all about. This small printing press is from Martin Schneider. He's a talented guy, a colleague from me now. And back in the days, it feels like it was, I think, more than 1 year ago. He invented or designed a small printing press. It's a tool which you can use to do printmaking, like an art form. So you scratch something, your art, into a metal plate, and together with the press and color, you can produce multiple prints of your artwork. Normally, this is difficult because a normal printing press or etching press is very big, it's expensive, maybe it weighs a ton, and there are maybe only 3 in Cologne, I don't know. It's really hard to get the hands on one. And the idea with this design, and finally the idea or our mission with the company, is to make printmaking as an art form more accessible. So more people can try it out and more people have access to this really interesting form of art. And this little printing press is 3D printable. So Martin designed it and put it on the internet for free. So everyone who owns a 3D printer, like the ones in the background or any other 3D printer, mostly any other 3D printer, can print himself or herself a press and start doing this nice form of artwork. When he put the press on the internet for free, many people, I think right now 40,000, 50,000 people already downloaded the press, and maybe some of them actually use them. As you can see on Instagram, if you look for the Open Press project, you can see that many people have different versions, different colors, and make beautiful stuff with it. But 1 year ago, also some people asked, hey, Martin, I don't have a 3D printer. Can you please print me a press? I will pay you. I just want this small press. And there was the idea born that we do a crowdfunding and we'll maybe produce for 50 people or maybe for 100 people. This would be really crazy, these presses. And the Kickstarter went very well. Actually, 1,500 people asked and give us money to print presses. And initially, it was not the idea that we really would print so many presses ourselves. We were really flashed from how many feedback we became. And then it evolved into a company, but there was some things we did wrong. And the first thing we did wrong was the pricing. We did not a big calculation. We had many thoughts about the design and how to make it work and all this stuff, but we did not so much talk about money. And this is okay if we had to print it for 15 people or 20 or 50 people. It would not be much, not a big deal. But to produce and to ship more than 1,000 presses, mostly to the US, that was a financial problem we discovered. And yeah, then we changed a lot of things, and finally we, as you can see in the background, these are like all the small parts here, different colors. All the parts.
Actually, they can't see the background right now because we see your shared screen, but you can maybe show it later.
Yeah, I will show you later. Sorry, I just thought you would see me. That's right. We have many parts, as you will see later. Yeah, it was a financial mess, and we changed a lot of things, and it went much better. And now we are nearly done. But I want to talk some about the insights, because my bachelor thesis is actually about the process and the things that we changed and how we handled the problems we had on the way and what we learned. Maybe one thing I would talk today about is the price of the press, because this was our first mistake. We really, it was an issue for us that we didn't do the calculation very well, and we have the problem that we want to do it better, because the press will be available also in a normal shop. We will have an online shop where you can buy it. Yeah, we thought about what price should we take for how much money we would ask. And this can be an easy question, but it's maybe not. The normal approach would be, or there are different approaches we took. The first is that we looked at our own costs. So here are our own costs, what we pay for producing the press, like what for 3D printing, what was for the software or for the electricity that we need to produce one. And when we have this, we can just put something on top, our margin, and can sell it. When we went this route, we discovered that firstly, it's very important for us to show what we pay. This is maybe not usual, but we will show, and like you see now in the live stream, you can see how much we pay for one press, and you can see how much we earn. Because we felt that this is important, and we wanted to keep this project this way. But also, when we know our own costs, we still have the question, okay, how much do we put on it? Like 30%, like 40%, like in many shops, or like is 5% enough? And we were stuck. So the next approach would be that you look at the competition. What do other people pay for a press, or what does our competition offer, and what does a press usually cost? This is not very easy, because most presses are bigger, but there are some small ones, and the cheapest one you can buy is like 200 US dollar or 200 euros actually. And it's not the same, it cannot do the same things, etc. But that would be the comparison, the cheapest press that can do etching prints that you can buy. But 200 euros was way too much for us. That's also not for us the right approach to ask, okay, just because there are other products that sell for this price, we will take the same price. Also, in addition, we learned that there are not many printing presses sold in Germany. And so to take a product that maybe rarely sells as a reference is maybe not the best idea. So we came to the conclusion of the value-based price. That's basically is just that you ask people, what would you pay? We asked many people. Actually, we did not ask what would you pay. You do like different questions, like what would be too cheap, what would be too expensive, what would be expensive but you would still buy it, what would you consider a good deal. And with this many questions, you can do some calculations and some graphs and see what would be, for example, the optimal price point. When you look into it, and with our data, it would be that with a price from 150 45,950 for 154 US dollar. That at that price, not too many people would say it's too expensive. So the most people would buy one, and we would have the biggest revenue with this price. Actually, that's where we would normally stop, because perfect, we have a price, we know with this price we will make the most profit, it's done. But it felt not fair for us. It felt like, that's not fitting to us. It's like that feels not right. And actually, our mission is to make printmaking more accessible. And our mission is not to make the most money out of printmaking. That's bullshit. So we really wanted to have a more open and fair approach. And this approach would involve that the customer can pay what he wants. This was our first idea, that we said, okay, everyone can pay as much as he wants. But it turns out that people are a little bit, disturbed or not happy with naming a price, because it's work and they have to think about it. And studies show that people, even if they can say their own price, they don't do it and rather say nothing than maybe guess a wrong price that does not be okay with them. So we did a bigger study. We asked 200 people, and this time we went for choose what you pay. So you do not say your own price, but we say 3 prices, for example, and starting with 88 US dollars. That's our own cost, includes with shipping, and so there's no margin in it. And also 2 other prices like 120 US dollar and 139 $140 nearly. And you can choose your own price. But we were afraid that many people would just pick the lowest price, and we cannot succeed with our project and cannot support the future of it. And we were still not sure if maybe too many were thinking about, I don't know how much to pay, so maybe one price would be better. So we did a comparison with 200 people, and one group we asked, okay, how much, if you say you are interested in the press, or this is a project, which price would you choose? Or would you do not buy a press? And the other group, we asked just one price, the 120 US dollar, and they had only the option to pay 120 or to not buy the press. And what was really interesting is that more people bought the press and choose the price with 3 different options than people who did no choice. And actually more people said it's theoretical that they will pay 140 US dollar than people who said we only pay you the cost you have with 88 US dollar. So people in theory were really, it was a nice outcome, and there was quite difference. And actually in this case, and with a group of 200 people and comparing them, we would have more revenue if we give people the option to just pay our self-costs. And that was a really interesting outcome for us. It's not scientific because it's only 71%. There's only a 71% chance that people will pay actually more. But that's totally okay for us, because we were afraid that people have problems with choosing a price and that we really have a big loss for this, which would be maybe okay when we can handle it. But when it's even better, then I was very happy that the ethical right choice is also the economically good decision. Yeah, that was the price idea of, or the price journey we had with our press. I think I have 15 minutes to talk, and Tamara, do I have 1 or 2 minutes more, or should I stop and not tell more? Okay, then I will go along a little bit and tell another short story that's actually about the business itself, and yeah, about how we handle decision and how we talk to each other. When we founded the company, we were at the normal decision that everyone does who founds a company, that you have to decide with an with a contract what does your business partner is allowed to do, what is he not allowed to do, and how does decisions be made, like normally all people must agree, and so on. And we took the approach that there are no rules, or actually the rules have no consequences. It's like because Martin and also me, we can do everything. We could take all the money or buy even more 3D printers just because we like, or one of us likes, or could whatever we want, and there would be no legal consequences. This is because I compare it to anarchy, because you can do actually everything. If I decide I want a golden desk, I can buy a golden desk, and Martin cannot do anything about against or about it. And the interesting part here is that this actually led to empathy, to a good communication, to more respect, to an interesting behavior, because we did this not on purpose. We just trusted each other and we went this way. But looking back and working with this on my bachelor thesis, I found out that we actually think a lot about what the other will think about it, and the opposite happens from what you would maybe expect. Maybe you would expect, okay, if everyone can do everything, you just do it. You just buy the things. You don't talk to each other. But the opposite happens. It's actually that you talk much more together, and you start to think for your business partner. Because ultimately, when the business can be shut down by your partner at any moment, you automatically think about, okay, is this cool for him what I do? And you no more rely on rules that say, okay, if I buy something above 100 euros, I have to ask him. What you really ask yourself now is, okay, how does he feel with it? Is it okay? Yeah, he will for sure say the same thing. And if I have a doubt, I talk to him, because if he's not happy with it, the company is in danger, and everything, all my work I put in it, all of this can be destroyed. So you automatically think about what is good for the other one and what is his interest, and to try to have the same interest and to work together to the same aim. So it was an interesting discovery for me that actually this kind of freedom led for us, and I believe that this can be true for many cases, led to more trust and to even more communication in a good way. Yeah, I think that's basically what I can say about it. I can scroll through some pages if you want from my thesis. Actually, with the text, there are 20 questions asked, like the two I just talked about. There are different like things how we got lost in chaos or not, and what we think about marketing and how we see competition and all this stuff, because we believe in a more open way of doing business, and in a more idealistic company, that it's possible, and and also not only ethical right, but as you saw with the price question, is also economically the right way to do. Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Now,
thank you so much, Dominik. Probably we could see where you are right now, so that you can show us what you wanted to show us.
What I was showing before, and you didn't see it, was the parts behind me. In this shelf, you see like the parts for 1,500 presses. It's like 40,000 parts roughly in different colors, and all this has to be built together into presses. And what you see here behind us, this is actually the printing farm. Initially, we wanted to have one who can print for us, but it was too expensive because our calculation was not good. We had to do it ourselves, and to not sleep behind these printers or in front of these printers, because every 14 minutes, roughly, or 17 minutes, one printer would need attention, and one piece would be removed. We automated the process of printing, and this helped us a lot. And yeah,
this is great.
Interesting thing.
And we have a question online. So, did you design the press? And if not, what did you design for your bachelor thesis?
The press itself is from Martin Schneider. If you look for the Open Press project, you mostly will see him. What you see me in a video is rarely. I'm more the guy, the person behind the curtain. I'm here since the project, or like since this press became a company or became the Kickstarter. And my thesis is about the company and how the methods, what we discovered here, like how we discovered a prize. And actually we designed, actually Martin is the designer and the founder of the press. And in the process, we had to change a lot of things. Example is the steel roller. Initially, it was just a steel tube that rolls. And I was involved in designing it or changing it with ball bearings and finding an economical way to kind of mass produce it. But the founder of the project is Martin Schneider. And if he wants or not, I will show you. And he wants not, I'm sure for this. He's on the same desk with me. And getting red here because we did, I said I will not show him, but that's how it went. But it's his press, and my bachelor thesis is about the process, not about the press itself or about the design itself. The design itself was actually also a study work from Martin, but that's not about the press itself.
And so what did you show during your bachelor thesis? Did you come up with some kind of service, customer journey, or any kind of marketing plan, economical system?
Marketing is also a part of the book I wrote as the thesis. So the question is, what do you think about marketing? And the short answer is not much. Who likes advertisements? And so our question is, shortly is, we will do no marketing. That means that we will have no budget for it. We will not calculate and say, okay, if you buy a press, 5 euros of it go to marketing. That would be what normal companies would do. And we don't believe in this kind of marketing. And yeah, that's our idea of marketing. That does not mean that we don't do things that, for example, service designers would do. But we do not marketing in this way.
And I heard about your project before when I was at KIST, but also all the way up to Australia. In Australia, while a lecturer was mentioning your project in your company during a presentation, and I was wondering, what is the current status at a global scale? Like, do you have like a lot of offers and orders from everywhere around the world, or is it pretty located?
It's really all over the world. For now we have no orders because we accept only a list where we say, okay, if the Kickstarter is over and everyone who pledged for a press has gotten their press, then we can sell it, because everything else would be not fair. And so we can talk for the Kickstarter, and with the Kickstarter, most people, like I think 80% or something, are from the US. And actually, as an example, we are from Germany, and we have more supporters and people who bought one press in the central of London than in whole of Germany. So it's really not a really German project. It's really an international thing. And when you check the Instagram account, the open press that you can print yourself, actually went through the whole world. In Australia, some people printed one. There's actually a guy who printed on a plane flying, just on the, I don't know. It's really, and that's interestingly, it's also the answer to the question before, to marketing. We depend, or our idea is a lot about giving things away for free. All this is only possible, and all the big company and all the money that's involved is only possible because Martin decided in the first place to make it available for free and to give it away. And that's really the cause why this thing has grown. And we want to carry on with this idea about, but when this is kind of marketing, if you say this is marketing, then our marketing strategy would be to give things away for free that have value, of course, not a pencil with your logo on. I mean other things.
That is amazing. Really cool to see that you try another, you have another approach to it. Thank you so much for your presentation.
I will tell Martin again.
Yes, tell him.
Thank you guys, and congratulations. I wish you the best for your company, and you deserve it.
I will tell Martin.
And you too, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a lot of work actually, and a lot of stress, and yeah. But it looks good now. In the beginning, we were like 20,000 euros loss we would have to pay on top just to deliver the presses. And now it looks much better, and we have this printing farm, and there are so many projects we want to tackle and to move on. And the next thing we think about, and when people get their presses and they start printing, we want to do a kind of collection thing, and we want to start with these things and not be we want to move on. It's like really frustrating that like, of course, with Corona, shipping is a problem, and so we would like to go on.
It really sounds exciting.
We have one last question. Is your press similar as a screen printing?
No, it's an etching press if you want. So screen printing is another kind of printing. So you will not print T-shirts with our press. It's a printing press that needs a lot of pressure, or that can deliver a lot of pressure. So you are able to work with metal plates and to carve in it, and the ink will stay in the grooves and will transfer to the paper through the press. It's a different idea than silk printing.
Can you show us one? Probably, do you have one around you?
Yeah.
So this is a lot of that.
You're muted right now.
This one muted me, sorry. Or maybe this one, I don't know. Yeah, we have many presses, and there are different colors, and we did a clamp. That was a really big thing for us. It seems small, but actually this thing saved the project in a way. Really, it's true. And we have and colorful things. And there are different colors, and this is the handle. It puts here so you can turn it, and this is magenta, and yeah, our glossy, glittery color. You can't see it, I think. No. Yeah. We have presses.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think people can visit your project. We gave the link of every single project that we had today on the live stream. You can find them in the description and also in the live chat. Just go and visit the students' online project. And in your case, at the very bottom, there is the link to your website, official website. So if you want to know
if you type Open Press project, you can find different ways, because the press itself you can download for free on Thingiverse, so you can go there, or you can go on Instagram and just have a look what people do with it, and yeah, and visit the website. There's a lot of stuff about it.
Great, thank you so much. So then we're done now for our talks for today. And at this point, we want to thank you, say a big thank you to all our graduates which presented today, that you took your time and presented here. And also we want to thank our professors, which had the supervision of this project, which are Professor Geis, Daniela Meinhardt, and Johanna Mehl, and also all our online parkour team, which is we are 5 people, and also thank you to all of them. We're all happy that we could make it, that we put up this live stream, and wish you a nice weekend. And now we will play some music, Now we will play some DJ sets. We hope you enjoy it and you have a nice evening. Please go and visit the website parcours.kis.de. And there you can also go into Jitsi spaces and meet some people and check out even more works of our graduates from this semester. Thank you so much for thank you so much that you've been here.